starting a new format, which is a short discussion of papers. I think it's probably more useful to have more papers discussed in a shorter format than the other way around. Although we also have some value in discussing papers more in depth, of course. But I think for this particular platform, the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. We talk a lot about academic papers as part of the whole stack of knowledge that we think is necessary to successfully invest money in the long term. And that's the purpose of the podcast, is to give people a sense. This is obviously not investment advice. So why do we talk about academic papers in the first place? Because we are at the crossroads of science, technology, and entrepreneurship. Our focus is on robotics, and in particular, the ability to train robots at scale and low cost so they can be deployed. And one of the most important tools for that is to find a way to learn from videos. This is particularly important for the robotic space because we don't have enough data to train robots at scale. This has been discussed in several forums. In particular, also Elon Musk discussed this around May when he gave a tour at the Gigafactory in Texas. I think it was actually CNBC that he spoke with when he spoke about the ability to train Optimus based on video. So this is going to be a focus now going forward for us to understand the science and the academic side of things and where the technology could be transferred into something like training an Optimus. So what's the goal here? Again, we need video data in order to train robots in the real world. So we want to transfer from video to real in terms of training. So let's be clear about the problem set, because that's really important here. What we're talking about here is basically the equivalent of a human watching surf videos and learning how to surf, or jiu-jitsu videos, or ballet videos, or whatever. And that's, of course, incredibly difficult. Anybody who's done anything skillful in their lives, I think, will attest to the fact that that's not possible. The reason that's not possible is because we don't have a direct translation from visual to actuator. So when we watch a surf video, we see a wave and we see somebody on the wave. And first, we don't have an ego perspective, right? We're watching it from the beach or wherever the camera is, from the drone. And that's, of course, a different perspective than the surfer on the wave. That's number one. Number two, even if we had an ego perspective, let's say we had cameras like GoPros all over our bodies, or, Kelly Slater has the GoPros all over his body. So we watch actually from his perspective. Even if we could see like the way his arm wrist sees or his leg sees, whether that's useful or not, it's a different question. But let's say we could see all of this stuff, we would still have a very hard time learning how to surf, simply because we don't have a direct translation between input and actuator. So what we see doesn't translate right into our muscle or muscle memory, if you will. We call it muscle memory, right? When we do jiu-jitsu, after 10,000 reps, we just do stuff. We don't even have to think. Let's call that muscle memory. So we don't have that. And the goal of training a robot on video is actually to translate the visual into a practical set of actuators that translates what the robot sees into action that is actually appropriate. That's the goal. In this first paper we're going to discuss today, they're solving a navigation problem. So they're not actually doing a manipulation problem. They're solving a navigation problem. The paper's in the show notes. It's actually a professor from UCLA. In my opinion, pretty interesting stuff that he's doing there. So there's two problems that he's trying to solve. Okay, one problem is when we have a video, let's say in this case, he's trying to teach navigation from video. So the goal is, again, it's only navigation, it's not manipulation. So this would be just, how do I get around, let's say, a town, given I have, I'm watching a video, which is actually pretty close to what Tesla's doing, right? And just as a sort of, a small detail here, the reason Tesla has been able to train FSD in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever, is because without some of these sophisticated technologies, is because they actually had video and actuator data in their fleet. And that's the big advantage of Tesla. They have video and actuator data in their fleet. So what this paper that we're discussing today is trying to mimic is the same thing. And they're doing that by using certain techniques such as grounding, first having a perception in grounded waypoints, and then using those waypoints as sort of a probabilistic distribution of where one could go, and then using a reinforcement learning algorithm where we summarize over possible trajectories and maximize a reward based on a certain goal, which is to get from A to B, and being rewarded in a reinforcement learning setting. So I'm not going to go into the details of the techniques. That's another thing that we're going to try to stay away in these types of discussions, just simply because I think for people that are really interested in the techniques, just go to the paper and read it. I think what we want to do here at the Big Picture is really discuss the ideas, and we want to discuss the potential transformation into the real world. So the idea is, again, to have a navigation of video based on waypoints, and then use those as a probabilistic distribution for where could I go. And then the reinforcement learning part of the task is to then adaptively train the agent to do the right thing. One more interesting thing that they're using is actually they're using human intervention in a way that they want to reward the agent for not having human intervention. So the human intervention here is sort of a negative reward. So you want to drive around and not have human intervention. And whenever you have a human intervention, that's sort of a negative reward. So the agent learns how to navigate with human intervention, but not as a positive reinforcement, but negative reinforcement. So it's really the equivalent of maybe like a prison situation where you just don't want to have the guards intervening at all. So the prison inmates act according to the rules because they don't want the guards to. Whenever they intervene, that's usually a negative reward. So it's kind of something like that. Sorry for the sort of depressing example here, but I guess that's the way I understand it. So to summarize this paper again, interesting paper. It's about from video to experience. It doesn't actually solve for manipulation. We're going to talk about some papers that deal with manipulation and the actual physics of the real world. But this is a first step into, I think, what we're looking at also for the area of experience. Richard Sutton, which is a big project that we're taking on now to really understand his approach towards AI, because we believe that AI in reinforcement learning trained exclusively on runtime. So there's no actual training at all. So the concept of training, I think, will eventually disappear, and we're going to have learning in runtime. That's the holy grail of AI going forward. Thank you.